Panama, Paraguay, and El Salvador will each hand you a second passport with territorial taxation and an upgraded lifestyle in Latin America. Three real pathways that most people don't even know exist. But the timelines range from 3 years to 7. The costs range from almost nothing to $300,000, and every single one of them has a dual citizenship catch that could cost you the passport you have once you get it. So these programs are changing fast. They always get harder, never easier, and the window you're looking at right now is the widest it's ever going to be. So let's break down what each country offers, what each one actually demands from you, and which one fits your life the best before any of these windows close. And I want to be clear about why we're talking about passports here and not just residency. Residency permits get modified, tightened, or revoked. We've watched it happen in real time recently. Paraguay has started enforcing its presence requirements that it ignored for years. Panama recently took its investment floor from $5,000 to over $200,000. El Salvador went the other direction and slashed its presence requirements in half. But those programs change. Citizenship via passport does not. Once you hold the citizenship, it's yours. So, step one in any of these programs is getting the visa and staying compliant. I break that down country by country in a separate video. The card will be right here. This video is the step 2, what it actually takes to cross the finish line and hold that second passport in your hand as a naturalized citizen. So first is Paraguay, which is the fastest play that you have here, and it has the lowest bar of entry in the entire comparison video. You can get temporary residency by declaring your intent to reside and show basic financial self-sufficiency. No specific investment required. You hold the temporary residency for 2 years and then you convert it to a permanent residency. Then your 3-year citizenship timeline starts. The total from start to finish is roughly 5 years. If you want to skip the temporary phase entirely, a bank deposit of around $6,000 or investing $70,000 through the SUACE program gets you straight to permanent residency with citizenship eligibility in 3 years instead of the total 5. As well, the passport itself opens 142 countries visa-free or visa on arrival, such as the Schengen, the United Kingdom, Singapore, South Korea. It's the strongest of the 3 passports we're comparing today. And it comes with something that neither of the other 2 can offer. Paraguay is a founding member of the Mercosur, so its passport doesn't just get you through airport immigration in 142 countries, it gives you the legal right to live and work in Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, and Uruguay, with no additional visa, no work permit, settlement rights across South America's largest economies in a single document. That's not just a passport, that's a lifestyle opportunity. Now, here's where the brochure and reality diverge a bit on the Paraguayan passport. Maintaining a Paraguayan residency early on is almost effortless. You visit once every 3 years and your status stays active. But if you're pursuing a citizenship, the second passport, that's a completely different commitment. The courts evaluating the naturalization applications are looking for a minimum of 183 days of physical presence per year for the 3 consecutive years in the lead up to your application. That's half your year in Paraguay for 3 years straight. And this isn't theoretical. Paraguay recently cracked down on enforcing these requirements after years of looking the other way. I covered that story in detail. Check it out right here if you want more information on the specifics. Additionally, Paraguay is landlocked. There are 0 direct flights from the United States to Paraguay. You're connecting through Panama City, Lima, or Sao Paulo, 10 to 16 hours each way, $1,200 minimum per round trip ticket costs. Add in accommodation, living costs, and the productivity you lose to a 20-hour travel day. Pursuing this passport costs multiples of what the entry-level investment suggests. The 3-year clock is real. The price of those 3 years is what nobody else is calculating for you. In addition, Paraguay has conditions on whether or not you can hold dual citizenship. I'm going to come back to that because it's the single most important detail in this entire comparison, and I want you to hear it alongside the other 2 options. So that leaves 2 more paths, and the next one takes a completely different approach. El Salvador. This is the most affordable of the 3 paths. The March 2026 reform slashed the presence requirements from 180 days per year to just 90. The most common entry point for most people is the rentista visa at $1,460 a month in passive income. No lump sum investment, no capital lockup. Retirees particularly qualify through the pensionado at roughly $1,100 a month. Entrepreneurs can enter through company formation with just $4,000 a year in annual sales. And of course, they still have that fantastic territorial taxation. There is 0 property tax, and it's a dollar-based economy in the same time zone as Chicago. The direct flights from Houston, Miami, and Los Angeles are only 2.5 to 4 hours long, with $250 to $500 round trip total. Much more accessible than Paraguay. El Salvador's citizenship timeline is 5 years of combined temporary and permanent residency. It's longer than Paraguay's, but the annual compliance math is radically different. 90 days a year at roughly $4,000 to $7,000 in total for flights, accommodation, and living costs from the US. That's not a compliance burden. It's more of a winter escape or a vacation with a residency clock attached to it. So what's the catch? The 90-day number is the residency floor, not the citizenship bar. The new reform's language requires demonstrating active participation in the economic and social life of the country. And immigration authorities have a wide discretion when evaluating your naturalization application. So if you show up for exactly 90 days with a suitcase and a return ticket just to keep your visa alive, that's not going to guarantee you a passport. It's not something that they're going to look favorably upon when they're deciding. The people who will actually get Salvadorian citizenship are the ones with local bank accounts, economic activity, and community ties. Real integration, not the bare minimum calendar compliance. And El Salvador has a clause in its nationality law that most people have never read. And again, I'll get to that with the Paraguayan and Panamanian one in just a moment, but it's not something that you want to skip. But even with that clause, the passport itself is solid. 131 countries visa free, 11 fewer than Paraguay and 8 fewer than Panama, but you still get the Schengen, you still get the UK, and most of Latin America. And it comes with the CA4 free movement across Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, a different regional mobility zone than Mercosur, but valuable if Central America is part of your plan. So if El Salvador trades on affordability, Panama trades on something else entirely: institutional depth. The canal handles 5 to 6% of all global commerce and roughly 40% of US container traffic. That's an economic anchor, and it doesn't depend on who's president, what party is in power, or what policy gets revised. Panama's economy is structurally stable in a way that neither Paraguay nor El Salvador will ever be able to claim. In addition, it's an international banking hub with the strongest expat infrastructure in Latin America, as well as the dollarized economy and established legal frameworks for foreign investments. To begin with, Panama's residency is the lowest maintenance of all three. You visit once every 2 years and your permanent residency will stay active. The qualified investor visa grants permanent residency from day one with no temporary phase, no waiting period. You land and obtain a permanent residency the moment that it's approved. The citizenship clock is where Panama slows down a bit. You need 5 years of permanent residency to be eligible for citizenship. And if you enter through the Friendly Nations visa, you spent the first 2 years in Panama on a temporary residency first. That time doesn't count. The real timeline for most first applications to citizenship eligibility through the Friendly Nations route is roughly 7 years. However, through the qualified investor route, it's only 5 years because you skip the temporary phase entirely. Either way, this is the longest path of the three. The investment floor reflects that institutional premium. The qualified investor visa requires $300,000 in real estate, and that's the current rate through October of 2026. After that, it's going to jump to $500,000. The Friendly Nations visa requires $200,000 in real estate or a fixed-term deposit. This is a premium path. You're paying for stability, infrastructure, and the most stable passport out of the three, with 139 countries visa-free, including, of course, the Schengen zone and the United Kingdom as well. Now, there's no official minimum presence requirements during those 5 years for maintaining your residency, but the naturalization is discretionary, just like in El Salvador and Paraguay. Attorneys on the ground will tell you that living in Panama for at least 3 of the 5 years significantly strengthens your application. It's softer than Paraguay's hard 183-day requirement, but it's real. Panama also asks you for something that other naturalizations do not. And now we're going to talk about those in the context of all three. So if you grab one of our do-it-yourself guides or book a strategy call, those are the people who are going to get the results that they want on these complex issues. So you've heard the timelines, the costs, and the presence requirements. You're probably already leaning toward one of these three options. But if you ask yourself what happens to your existing passport when you get a new one, Panama asks you for something at naturalization that the other two don't. So let's talk about all three of those and the catches that they all have. We've gone over the timelines and the costs as well as the presence requirements. You're probably already leaning towards one of these three. But have you asked yourself what happens to your existing passport when you get your new one? This is the part of the video that most people will never hear anywhere else because I'm the only one talking about it. Every single one of these passports has a dual citizenship trap and each one works differently. So first, Paraguay. The Constitution says dual citizenship is permitted only through reciprocal international treaties. As of 2026, Paraguay has exactly 2 of those treaties, with Spain and with Italy. That's it. If you're American, Canadian, British, Australian, there's no treaty. On paper, you cannot legally hold a Paraguayan passport alongside your existing one. Now, in practice, Paraguay doesn't verify this renunciation. They don't contact your home country, they don't check. The enforcement is effectively non-existent. But they don't check is not the same as you're protected. You're operating in a legal gray area with no treaty backing. And here's the fine print as well. Naturalized Paraguayans who are absent from Paraguay for more than 3 consecutive years can lose their citizenship. So the fastest passport of these three comes with the shortest lease by that measure. Next is El Salvador. Dual citizenship is explicitly allowed. That's the good news. But the bad news is buried in the nationality loss provisions that came packaged with the same reform that gave us the new 90-day rule this year. A naturalized Salvadorian citizen can lose their nationality if they reside in their country of origin for 2 or more consecutive years. So, 2 years back home, and your new passport is gone. They also lose it if they're absent from El Salvador for 5 or more consecutive years without express government authorization. So you can hold 2 passports, but only if you keep showing up in El Salvador. If you fly home to the United States after you get your Salvadoran second passport and you settle back into your old life for 24 months, the Salvadorian passport you spent all that time and money earning will be revoked. And there's no do-over. If it gets revoked, it's gone forever. And finally, Panama. At naturalization, you formally declare a renunciation of your prior nationality. That's part of the oath. So does that mean you actually lose your original citizenship? That depends entirely on your home country's laws. Americans don't lose citizenship from a foreign oath of renunciation. The United States requires a specific and voluntary act with the intent to relinquish, and a Panamanian naturalization oath does not meet that threshold from a legal standpoint. So an American nationalizing in Panama will keep both passports in practice. But if you're from a country that does honor foreign renunciation declarations, you could end up with your existing passport being revoked when you obtain the Panamanian one. And Panama's position on paper is that you're a Panamanian citizen only, no matter where you're from. This creates a legal ambiguity that varies person to person and passport to passport. So the question with these three isn't which one has no catches, because they all do. The question is which catch can you live with and whether you start before these programs get harder, because they will. We've seen that constantly over the last 5 years. The window you're looking at right now is the widest it's ever going to be. I break down the initial visa processes and how to stay compliant with each of these 3 countries in separate videos. Check the card right here if you want to get started on the step-by-step process. The best time to take action was 2 years ago. The second best time is today. Build a plan, diversify your options, and if you need help mapping out which of these paths fits your life best, or whether it's doing it yourself or a custom strategy, those links are all in the bio. We'll build you a plan that doesn't fall apart the next time a country rewrites its rules. The right information makes it all possible. I'm Brad with Evolution Expats, and I'll see you in our next video.